France's leader, Emmanuel Macron, literally slapped in the face today by a man while in southern France. The president's security detail was able to immediately tackle the man and move Macron to safety. Authorities arrested the slapper and another man suspected of filming video of the incident. It does not appear like Macron was seriously injured. A scathing bipartisan report on the January 6th Capitol attack blaming the breach on security and intelligence failures at every level of government. The report is also making headlines tonight for what is not in it. Investigators not allowed to address any role former President Trump may have had in inciting the insurrection. What comes next? Our conversation with Republican Senator Susan Collins.
It is a well-done report, but to me, there are still issues and questions that remain unanswered.
The major warning tonight on the new highly infectious Delta variant from Dr. Fauci, what he says is required to stave off an infection. And tonight, the FBI is leading the way in one of the most comprehensive global criminal takedowns ever. More than 800 arrests in 16 countries, interrupting all types of plots around the globe. The clever way the government lured the criminals into a false sense of security. A bombshell report tonight on the super rich and taxes, ProPublica's secret trove of never-before-seen records, and what they reveal about how the wealthiest avoid paying income tax. It may be ground zero for the growing rift between urban and rural America, talking about Oregon. A report from a divided state, some areas so dissatisfied they want to literally move Oregon's borders to join Idaho.
It goes all the way back to the difference between urban and rural. We're rural out here. Rural folks have that traditional value of family, faith, and freedom. We're tied to our land.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. Intelligence failures at every level. That was the conclusion today from a bipartisan 5-month-long Senate probe on the January 6th insurrection released earlier today. The 95-page report found significant breakdowns and many warning signs that went ignored. One senator even saying the siege was planned in plain sight. The probe recommends 20 improvements, such as increasing police training and better intelligence sharing at the Capitol. But there are questions tonight about what the report did not focus on. Lawmakers were not allowed to look into whether former President Trump had any role in inciting the attack. The senators also were unable to interview any of the 465 under arrest in the attack as their cases move through what is one of the largest criminal investigations in FBI history. Congressional correspondent Rachel Scott leads us off tonight from Washington.
Tonight, a blistering bipartisan report revealing massive security failures at every level of government leading up to January 6th. The 5-month investigation painting a dark picture, revealing critical breakdowns in communication and preparation among the Capitol Police, FBI, DHS, and Department of Defense. The panel finding that weeks before the attack, Capitol Police intelligence uncovered information about the threat of violence, including a blog post with a map of the Capitol, encouraging Trump supporters to surround every building with a tunnel entrance or exit. One comment saying, "This is do or die, bring your guns." But the full scope of that information was never fully conveyed to Capitol Police leadership or its officers, who then came under attack. Senator Amy Klobuchar was one of 4 senators who led the review.
Is there any reason why the Capitol should have been left vulnerable on January 6th?
No. Literally, there were posts floating around with maps of the tunnels under the Capitol.
The report laying out 20 recommendations, including the selection of a new Capitol Police chief. Late today, the department responding.
This department is already making major changes to protect our most valuable asset, which is you and everybody on Capitol grounds.
But the report did not address what led up to the attack, including if former President Donald Trump's words provoked the violence we saw that day, or any contributing factors in the weeks and months leading up to the attack. And tonight, renewed calls from Democrats and some Republicans to investigate what led to this, even after efforts for a January 6th commission failed.
I see this report as very valuable, but not a substitute for an independent commission.
But it has already failed once in the Senate, blocked by Republicans. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell telling me it's a non-starter.
What we needed was a quick solution to the problem on security and pursuit of those who broke the law, which the Justice Department assures me is going on very, very aggressively.
Our thanks to Rachel. And turning now to breaking developments out of Washington, the White House and Republicans say that their talks on infrastructure deal have broken down. Let's bring in our chief Washington correspondent, Jonathan Karl. John, what are both sides saying as far as why these talks between President Biden and the GOP's lead negotiator, Senator Shelley Moore Capito, have ended?
Well, the White House put out a statement saying that the president informed Senator Capito that her latest offer, quote, did not meet the essential needs of our country. For her part, Senator Capito told ABC News that Biden had repeatedly moved the goalposts and that he simply decided to walk away. But, Lindsay, look, they were hundreds of millions of dollars apart. And where Biden wanted to pay for all of this by raising taxes on the wealthy, raising taxes on some corporations, that's simply been an absolute non-starter for all Republicans, including Senator Capito.
And soon the president is going to be heading to Europe, but the White House says that he'll stay engaged in bipartisan talks with other senators to try to move this deal forward.
In fact, there's a meeting underway now in the basement of the Capitol with another group of bipartisan senators trying to salvage the idea of coming together with a bipartisan agreement. I am told that Biden has already reached out to some of those senators. He will continue to do so. But the bottom line here is the two sides cannot agree, or at least right now, have no agreement on how much to spend, what to spend it on, or how to pay for it all. And those same issues will affect this group just as they affected the negotiations with Senator Capito.
It seems like they're still far apart there. Jonathan Karl, our thanks to you.
No doubt.
Joining us now for more on the report on the January 6th attack and efforts to bridge political divides is in the Senate, Maine Republican Senator Susan Collins. Thank you so much for your time tonight, Senator.
My pleasure.
So as we've reported, this new 95-page committee report outlines intelligence failures on multiple levels in the lead up to January 6th. Senator McConnell, as you know, has pointed to reports like this and others in the works to say that a bipartisan independent commission on the January 6th attack isn't necessary. Now, you helped author the legislation that created the 9/11 Commission and backed an independent review of the Capitol attack. Why do you think so many of your colleagues voted against it?
Well, first of all, let me say that I think that the bipartisan report that was released today on security in the Capitol was very valuable. It revealed a failure to communicate some essential intelligence, some failures of equipment, and the fact that the Capitol Police, who were so brave that day, lacked the training that they needed. It does not, in my judgment, replace the need for an outside independent commission to take a broader view of the issue. But some of my colleagues think that this is sufficient. It is a well-done report, but to me, there are still issues and questions that remain unanswered.
And with regard to that, are there changes on the table that you think could help get another vote on this commission that could get enough Republican support?
At this point, I'm pretty pessimistic about the chances of an independent bipartisan commission. It was very unfortunate that the Senate Democratic leader, Chuck Schumer, gave a highly partisan, inflammatory speech right before the vote that caused a couple of my colleagues who were inclined towards supporting a commission to think that it was going to be just a partisan exercise. So I think that was very unfortunate. Whether we would have been able to get the 10 votes, I can't say. I do know that the changes I proposed were responsible in helping us get to 7 votes, or it would have been 7 if everyone had been there. And so I think I made a positive contribution in that regard.
Of course, there are still major differences on both the scope of an infrastructure deal and how it should be paid for. Is there anything that you're advocating for with your Senate colleagues that might be able to help bridge that gap?
Well, the first thing that we need to do is decide what is the infrastructure. In the view of most Republicans, myself included, infrastructure means roads, bridges, airports, waterways, seaports, broadband. It is a more traditional definition. It refers to physical structures and digital improvements. unfortunately, the president still seems to be pretty wedded to including a vast expansion of social programs as part of infrastructure. So that's the issue that really is at the heart of the divide. I think a lot of the issues on the amount of money that could be spent or should be spent can be bridged if we can decide what is and what is not infrastructure.
President Biden has, of course, backed away from his call to raise the corporate tax rate to 28% and instead called for a minimum 15% corporate tax rate to help pay for new spending. Why are Republicans opposed to that minimum threshold when there are some major corporations paying zero in taxes while they're making billions of dollars each year?
Well, I think we need to look at all the possible pay-fors for a true infrastructure package. And one of the issues that I've talked to some governors about is the fact that they would like to be able to use some of the excess money that was appropriated in the 5 different COVID bills, and that's hundreds of billions of dollars that is not completely needed and has not been spent or even allocated, and redirect that to infrastructure projects. So I think that would be one source of money. As far as the corporate tax issue is concerned, I think that there can be further discussions on that, but we have to remember that a lot of times when it appears that a corporation is paying less tax than you or I might think was appropriate, that it's because they did a huge investment in a new plant or in research and development for which there is a tax incentive. So the very next year, they may be paying closer to the top rate. So it's something to look at, but I think that there are probably better sources.
And let's turn to your work on Havana syndrome attacks. You helped lead legislation that passed unanimously to provide help for American public servants who've suffered from brain injuries from these likely directed energy attacks. This first hit U.S. Embassy staff in 2016, but we still don't know who or what is behind them. What needs to happen to get to the bottom of these attacks and hold the culprits accountable?
This bill, which was passed unanimously last night, and you know how rare that is in the Senate these days, will provide additional medical care and financial compensation to those who, while serving our country, have been victims of these directed energy attacks. We now need a whole of government approach to discovering who is behind these attacks. What exactly is this directed energy weapon? Who is wielding it? And we need to hold them accountable. The press reports are that there are some 130 individuals who have been affected. They're members of our intelligence community, our State Department, our Defense Department. We simply cannot allow an adversary to go after hardworking American public servants who are being targeted in such a terrible way that it's leaving some of them with lifelong debilitating brain injuries.
And what a credit to you. I just have to add that you were able to author legislation that, again, passed unanimously. Before we go, you've said let's move on when talking about the 2020 election and former President Trump. But in states like Arizona and Georgia, state lawmakers, as you know, are focused on trying to prove fraud when there is no evidence of it. Are you concerned that these efforts might undermine the public's faith in our elections going forward?
I am concerned about that. The elections are the bulwark of our democracy, and everyone who's eligible to vote should have confidence that their vote counted and that there is not fraud. The reason I've concluded that there was not widespread fraud that would have altered the results of this last election is that there was more than 60 lawsuits that were brought, and and every single one of them was thrown out of court, including a lawsuit that reached the Supreme Court. So if there were evidence of widespread fraud, the courts would have stepped in and ordered remedial action of some sort.
Senator Susan Collins, we thank you so much for your time on what we know especially is a busy day. We appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you.
Now to the coronavirus pandemic and progress on vaccines for younger children as Pfizer moves into phase 2 trials for those from 5 to 11 years old. And Moderna says that their vaccine for that group could be available by this fall. But with the vaccine rates slowing, there's concern that unused doses are going to waste in multiple states. And now new warnings about the Delta variant, first seen in India, now spreading in the UK. Here's ABC's Eva Pilgrim.
Tonight, a warning from President Biden about the growing threat from the Delta variant first identified in India. Folks, the Delta variant, a highly infectious COVID-19 strain, is spreading rapidly among young people between 12 and 20 years old in the UK. If you're young and haven't gotten your shot yet, it really is time. It's the best way to protect yourself and those you love. The variant, which helped fuel the devastating surge in India, is now the dominant strain in the UK, which is why Dr. Fauci says getting vaccinated here at home is more urgent than ever.
We want to get to and above the goal of 70% of the adult population receiving at least one dose by the 4th of July.
Right now, the Delta variant makes up 6% of samples tested in the U.S., but Dr. Fauci warning the U.S. is not in the clear.
We cannot let that happen in the United States. If you had your first dose, make sure you get that second dose.
He says it's critical to get fully vaccinated. The Pfizer vaccine was 88% effective against the Delta variant after the second dose, but only 33% effective after just one dose. Tonight, Pfizer launching its phase 2 and 3 trial in younger children ages 5 to 11.
You're doing great.
Today at Stanford, 6-year-old Sophia Chavez and her 9-year-old brother Nicholas getting the first of 2 shots, a lower dose of vaccine than what's given to adults.
So far, what we're seeing is the vaccine is just as safe and well tolerated as what we've seen in adults.
In New Orleans, 7-year-old Russell Bright getting his shot too.
That's why I've been trying to do all this stuff, so I can see my friends more.
Just wants to see his friends more. So many can relate to that. Eva Pilgrim joins us now. Eva, we've reported that tens of millions of unused doses of the vaccine are sitting on shelves. And today we learned of warnings from governors that some of those doses are expected to expire this month.
That's right. And the White House was asked about this today, really pushing back, saying that it's just a small fraction of the total doses and saying that it's not realistic to expect that not a single dose will be wasted. But this scrutiny is coming at a time when much of the world is desperate for this COVID vaccine. The governor of Ohio saying that even if they wanted to send the vaccine somewhere else that had a need for it, they can't right now because they don't have a legal option to do so. Lindsay?
Interesting development there. Okay, Eva Pilgrim, our thanks to you. And now to the FBI and the arrests across the globe of more than 800 people in 16 countries. They thought they were using a secure app to communicate, but it turns out it was all an elaborate ruse developed by the FBI. ABC's Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas explains.
Tonight, one of the biggest international dragnets ever, with the FBI deploying technology like it never has before. With the help of an informant, the FBI developed and distributed an encrypted app known as Anon, putting it on more than 12,000 phones that were pushed out to more than 300 crime syndicates across the world.
The criminals using these devices believe they were secretly planning crimes far beneath the radar of law enforcement. But in reality, the criminals were not underneath the radar. They were on it.
The app allowing authorities to track the criminals' every move. Like this brick of cocaine, part of a shipment from Carlsbad, California, bound for Australia. And these drugs found in Bogota, housed in cases of bananas.
We were able to actually see photographs of hundreds of tons of cocaine that were concealed in shipments of fruit.
The sting allegedly uncovered murder-for-hire plots, saving lives.
As of today, we have charged 224 alleged offenders, acted upon 21 threats to kill, including saving a family of 5.
Pierre Thomas joins us now. Pierre, fighting the threats from international criminal gangs is a priority for this administration. You spoke with DHS Secretary Mayorkas about those threats today.
Well, we did. The Homeland Security Secretary was blunt. He said the energy grid, the water supply, and food supply are all at risk because nations and hackers are sophisticated and they're ruthless, Lindsay.
And Pierre, the CEO of the Colonial Pipeline testified on the Hill today about the fact that they just weren't ready to deal with the ransomware attack that eventually choked off gas supplies on much of the East Coast.
That's right. He said it will take a team effort by industry and government to combat hacking, but he admitted that the company was not prepared as it should have been, Lindsay.
Pierre Thomas reporting in from the nation's capital. Thanks so much, Pierre. Next to the suspects arrested in connection with the death of 6-year-old Aiden Leos in an apparent road rage incident in California. They appeared before a judge to hear the charges for the first time. The district attorney is now alleging that after the shooting, the couple took steps to hide their car. Here's ABC's Will Carr.
Tonight, Marcus Anthony Ariz is charged with murder after authorities say he killed 6-year-old Aiden Leos in a fit of road rage. The 24-year-old, who police say pulled the trigger, making his first court appearance, along with his alleged accomplice, Winnie Lee, who police say was the driver and helped Ariz avoid capture. The arrest coming more than 2 weeks after Aiden, strapped into his car seat on his way to kindergarten, was killed by a bullet fired through the back of the car. Aiden's mom clutching him in her arms on the side of the road. His last words, "Mommy, my tummy hurts."
In a civilized community, we should be able to drive our kid to school and not worry that they're going to be shot in the back.
Police say they've recovered the handgun, which they say was registered to Ariz. They've also recovered the car, a white Volkswagen, which they say was registered to Lee's parents.
Once it came to light that they were wanted for the murder of a little boy, they absolutely engaged in hiding that car.
The suspect's court appearance one day after little Aiden was laid to rest in a private ceremony. Aiden's mother spoke at a memorial service this weekend.
He had a beautiful heart for others and the most pure thoughts regarding this world and the people within it.
I'm still stuck on "Mommy, my tummy hurts." Just an awful story. Will Carr joins us now. Will, so what happens next with these suspects?
Yeah, it's heartbreaking, Lindsay, and as this memorial grows, a judge just upped the bail for the suspected shooter to $2 million, citing the seriousness of the crime and the concern that he could be a flight risk. If he's convicted, he could face life in prison. Lindsay.
Will Carr, our thanks to you. Now to the record-breaking heat and humidity from the northern plains to the northeast. An official heat wave now in effect for Boston and Philly. 3 straight days of 90-plus degrees and flash flood emergencies in Arkansas and Mississippi. ABC senior meteorologist Rob Marciano is tracking it all. Rob, when will these patterns break?
It's trying to change, Lindsay, I can tell you that. And the storms that we had across the Northeast is kind of a signal of that. They're beginning to wind down now. Look at the radar. We still have flash flood watches that are posted. And we had a lot of warnings earlier. Still some heavy rain in some of these. And a thunderstorm that is pretty strong just north of Atlantic City. You mentioned the flash flood emergency south of Little Rock earlier today. Severe thunderstorm watch remains up for another hour or two. This is an area that is susceptible to flooding, very saturated, and might see more in the way of flooding because they'll get a couple of more rounds of rain over the next couple of days. This is a situation we're going to have to watch carefully, and people need to be light on their feet if they live in that area. Meanwhile, more heat and humidity for the upper Midwest, especially tomorrow. Looks like Minneapolis is going to continue its week-long run of 90-plus degree weather there. That could set a record. And another day of heat and humidity in D.C., Philly, and New York City before we really get into some big-time cooling. We'll get what's called a backdoor front that will slide down from Ontario, and that will cool things off tomorrow night and significantly Thursday and Friday. By Friday, New York and even Boston might be into the 60s for daytime highs. That will feel a whole lot different. Lindsay?
Much different. Wasn't all that long ago, just Memorial Day weekend. People were wondering where the heat is. It is upon us now. Rob Marciano, our thanks to you. When we come back, the so-called undercover mother is now facing charges. What she says now, why she thought it was a good idea about attending classes posing as her daughter, something that was bound not to end well. The teen girl wounded after she opened fire on deputies in Florida, forcing them to eventually fire back. She appeared before a judge, but will she be charged as an adult? But up next, the blockbuster report. Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, two of America's wealthiest who did not pay income tax in certain years. They were not the only billionaires. We speak with one of the investigators who uncovered this next.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir.
We have made it through another week together.
America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
Admit it, these days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan. Wake up with America's #1 most watched morning show. ABC's
Good Morning America.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news source. Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
There's a sense of pride when I look at the Black families that were in towns like Tulsa.
The white population burned the whole town down.
100 years ago, there were race riots and massacres across the country.
In telling the story of what happened, we can understand what we have come through. This idea that we will make America what it was, no, no, no. We will make America what she should be.
Take a look at this harrowing rescue over the Everglades swamps. Miami-Dade Fire and Rescue called in and hoisted 2 individuals trapped in the often alligator and critter-infested area after their small plane made an emergency landing. The cause of the crash is still under investigation, but fortunately, no one was injured. And now to a massive IRS tax leak revealed in a new investigative report by ProPublica. The wealthiest of Americans, billionaires like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Warren Buffett, paid little to no federal income tax. In fact, listen to this. The richest 25 people paid less in federal income tax than most American workers. And it was all legal. But should it be? Here's ABC's Terry Moran.
The numbers revealed in the report from the investigative group ProPublica are staggering. In 2007, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos made $3.8 billion. But Bezos, now the richest man in the world, paid nothing, not a dime, in federal income taxes that year. Same story for Tesla billionaire Elon Musk in 2018. Investment icon Warren Buffett says he supports higher taxes for the rich.
The wealthy are definitely undertaxed.
And he, too, has benefited. Between 2014 and 2018, Buffett made a whopping $24.3 billion. But over those years, he paid just $23.7 million in federal income taxes, an infinitesimal percentage of the money he made.
Families have to pay their tax bills regularly, but the billionaires have found a way to avoid that.
ProPublica found nothing illegal. Its investigation focused only on federal income taxes, which are largely based on wages and salaries. But these billionaires make most of their money from investments, which have long been given preferential treatment, not from salaries. And that skewers the federal tax code towards the wealthy.
And many people felt that they knew this, but perhaps just not as egregious as it might be. Terry Moran joins us now. And Terry, the IRS is now investigating how ProPublica obtained the private tax information of all these billionaires?
They are, Lindsay. ProPublica actually obtained
the data on thousands of the richest Americans from the IRS. That is an unprecedented leak of tax information. The IRS has long said that privacy is one of its prime goals in collecting taxes, and this is being investigated by the IRS and the FBI, as you said. Now, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, they both declined to comment to ProPublica on all of this. However, Warren Buffett did release a statement, and in it he declared, quote, "I continue to believe that the tax code should be changed substantially." Lindsay?
All right, Terry Moran, our thanks to you. And for more now, we bring in ProPublica senior reporter and editor Jesse Eisinger, who co-authored this report. This is really just extraordinary reporting. We thank you so much for joining us tonight. As you explain, Americans are taxed on income and on gains when they sell an asset, but we generally aren't taxed on things that we haven't sold, like stock shares or homes that we still live in. These are known as unrealized gains. Why is it important for your team to look at these kinds of gains that are not taxed?
That's a great question. So we got all of the tax returns of thousands of the wealthiest Americans, and we looked very closely at the 25 ultra wealthiest, the top 25. And what we found is they're completely out of the tax system. So as you said astutely, we get taxed because we have salaries, and the taxes get taken out of our salaries. And we really have no choice. We're stuck in the system. The ultra wealthy don't have salaries often, or they have minuscule salaries. Instead, what they have is assets, and assets that grow, like Amazon stock or Tesla stock. And what happens is that goes up and up and up, and they become billionaires and multi-billionaires. And then they have all this wealth. That's the equivalent of their income, but they're not taxed on it. And what they do often is borrow against that. They live off of that. This is what their income is, how they can extract money, but it's not taxed. They're completely out of the system.
So billionaire investor Carl Icahn responded to your request for comment by saying, quote, "There's a reason it's called income tax. The reason is if you're a poor person, a rich person, if you are Apple, if you have no income, you don't pay taxes." And then he added, do you think that a rich person should pay taxes no matter what? And I'm curious how you would respond to that question, if it's a matter of you thinking that people should be taxed based on their wealth and not just their income.
Yeah, Carl spoke to us, and he was very perplexed. He couldn't understand the concept. He said, I'm just a rich person. Why should I be taxed? Now, we're not policy people. We're just journalists. So we don't prescribe a policy. We wanted to describe reality for people so that they fully understood it. With Carl, the way it works is that his business borrows immense amounts of money, billions of dollars, and then he goes and invests, and he amplifies his returns. He's an investor, so he gets boosted returns from borrowing money, just like people do when they have a mortgage. They put a down payment on a house, they have a mortgage, and when they sell, they can keep the gains. That's what Carl does with his investments. Now, the trick is for Carl, everything flows down through his business into his personal taxes. And then when he's paying interest on those loans, he gets to deduct that from his income, and it wipes out all of his income. And so the taxpayer is subsidizing his borrowing. It's a great deal for him. It's not necessarily great for the taxpayer.
And many Americans have long thought that the ultra-rich don't pay their fair share of taxes, but your team uncovered an enormous trove of information. Do you think that our tax system is even more inequitable than even the cynics among us believed it to be?
I think that even the cynical people, and even people who shrugged and said, yeah, sure, we know that wealthy people don't pay a lot of taxes, I think they would have been shocked yesterday to learn, and I hope they were shocked today to learn, that Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world, had 2 years recently, 2007 and 2011, when he was a billionaire, and he paid zero in taxes. And Elon Musk in 2018, zero in federal income taxes. And Michael Bloomberg, who ran for president, zero in federal income taxes in 2010. George Soros, these are household names, Carl Icahn, and you can pay zero in tax. Not only that, but they're paying basically 3.4% on their wealth growth in taxes. most average Americans, people making the median salary, about $60,000, $70,000, they're paying about 14% on income taxes. These guys are paying 3.4% on the equivalent of their income, their wealth growth. That seems like a deeply, profoundly unfair system.
And lastly, ProPublica says that it will publish more reports in the coming months. Can you give us just a little taste, a little preview of what we might be able to expect?
Well, we're going to comb through all the data and look for deductions, loopholes, people taking advantage of the system. We have data on thousands of Americans going back more than 15 years, wealthiest Americans. We have audit information, so we're going to find out who the IRS was audited, who the IRS audited, and what the results of those audits were. We know that the IRS budget has been going down, 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 and audits for the wealthy have been collapsing. So we think that they're probably getting away with a lot, and we're going to try to uncover as much as we can. In fact, if people have tips, if lawyers and tax accountants and average people have tips for us, they can go to ProPublica.org and give us tips securely, and we welcome that.
Let me just follow up on that really quickly and ask you, what's the end result, the desired end game for you here? You said very clearly you're not a policy maker, but would you like to see some policy changed as a result of you putting the spotlight on this?
Well, we really don't advocate for specific policies or any policies at all. We're prohibited. We're a nonprofit. But what we try to do is we think it is in the public interest to understand what the wealthy pay and what they don't pay, and their deductions and the loopholes and the system itself that's designed to allow the ultra wealthy to be completely out of the tax system. We believe that's a public service, and we hope that readers agree.
Jesse Eisinger, we thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Still ahead here on Prime, with the divide between rural America and urban America appearing to grow, we travel to Oregon, where several counties want to secede and join Idaho. Is this the future of political discourse in America? Major news in the Bachelor world. Longtime host Chris Harrison is out. And the global economy is soaring. We take a look by the numbers. But first, our tweet of the day. NASA releasing these unbelievable images of the largest moon in our system near Jupiter.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart they did this.
It's the time of suspicion.
The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
Hours, Assault on the Capitol, the ABC News original, exclusively on Hulu, now streaming. With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir.
We have made it through another week together.
America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan. Wake up with America. America's #1 most watched morning show, ABC's
Good Morning America.
ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for overall excellence in television. ABC News, America's #1 news source.
Welcome back, everyone. Now to the global economy and a report out today by the World Bank that predicts an expansion, the likes of which we have not seen in decades. We take a look by the numbers. 5.6%, that's how much the global economy is set to expand in 2021, according to the World Bank. That's the strongest post-recession pace in 80 years and the fastest one-year global growth since 1973. But the recovery is highly uneven. 90% of advanced economies like ours are expected to return to pre-pandemic levels next year, while the World Bank projects just a third, 33% of developing economies will do so. The U.S. is expected to grow nearly 7% in 2021, while China, the world's second biggest economy, is on track to grow by 8.5%. The strengthening global economy is now boosting sales of American exports, which helped shrink the U.S. trade deficit to below $69 billion in April. And just today, the Labor Department reported a staggering 9.3 million job openings in the U.S. That's an all-time high and a clear sign that the American economy is heating up. Some much-needed good news. We still have a lot to get to here on Prime tonight. The emotional reunion between a mother and son separated until she saw him on TV crossing the border. And the sports world is honoring a former NFL Coach of the Year who has passed. But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
Guide you through it all tonight. We have made it through another week together.
Big hug, Griffin.
We tell all our patients how much they're loved. We hold their hands.
David, we're showing our love and support for all the ICU staff.
They're the heroes in this.
Of pride when I look at the Black families that were in towns like Tulsa. The white population burned the whole town down.
100 years ago, there were race riots and massacres across the country.
In telling the story of what happened, we can understand what we have come through. This idea that we will make America what it was, no, no, no. We will make America what she should be.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for overall excellence in television. ABC News, America's #1 news source.
This is GMA3, what you need to know. GMA3.
A third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon.
It's all about you. Lunchtime on ABC.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
A damning new report from a bipartisan Senate investigation found serious security lapses leading up to the January 6th assault on the Capitol. The report found a broad breakdown of intelligence from multiple agencies. Senators said critical information of a planned assault was dismissed, information they say that was hidden in plain sight. The report focused only on police response and did not consider former President Trump's role in sparking the deadly violence.
It was widely known that it would be a very likely violent crowd that was coming to Washington, D.C. They did not put out intelligence warnings that would have informed local officials as to how to adequately prepare.
The report took roughly 5 months to complete, a joint probe by the Senate Homeland Security and Rules Committees, ultimately creating a list of 20 recommendations, including giving the new Capitol Police Chief the power to directly request National Guard assistance in emergencies, and also recommending that Capitol police officers be trained and equipped appropriately, as many officers responding on January 6 were in regular duty uniforms, not riot gear.
An emotional family reunion in Texas. Glenda Valdez left Honduras for the U.S. 6 years ago, forced to leave her toddler, Emily, behind. Last month, she was shocked to see Emily in a TV report about children crossing the border alone. She was sobbing, traveling with strangers, and said she had lost her mother's number. It took Glenda several weeks to reach her. Last weekend, they were finally reunited at the Austin airport. Glenda says they'll never be separated again. An update on the dramatic shootout in Enterprise, Florida between police and 2 children. The 14-year-old girl who was wounded in that exchange appeared in court today after being released from the hospital. A judge ordered her held for 21 days while prosecutors decide whether to charge her as an adult. Authorities say she and a 12-year-old boy ran away from a group home, broke in and stole weapons from a house, then opening fire on deputies. Chris Harrison is leaving the Bachelor franchise. After 20 years with the reality show, Harrison announced his departure on Instagram, saying he's excited for his new chapter. He didn't say why he was leaving. The host temporarily stepped aside after questioning whether the racially insensitive posts of a former contestant deserved scrutiny. No word yet on who will replace him.
The sports world celebrating the life of former New York Giants head coach Jim Fassel. Fassel was the head coach from 1997 to 2003.
Big part of my life. Just a great man, great coach, and he will be missed. But I was definitely shocked this morning to find out this news, and I just want to send my love and condolences to his family. Great man. Enjoyed every minute with him as my coach and after my career, when we continue to stay in touch and talk.
A Pennsylvania man charged with impersonating former President Trump.
Federal prosecutors here in New York said Joshua Hall pretended to be former President Trump or one of his relatives to trick unsuspecting people into funding a re-election organization that did not exist. Hall convinced hundreds of people to donate thousands of dollars, the FBI said, and used the money for personal expenses. At one point, court records said Hall created a social media account using the name and photograph of one of Trump's siblings to tout the organization and endorse his own role. Josh is doing great work, the Post said. Please give him a follow and support him.
Welcome back. A mother in Texas is facing some serious criminal charges after she posed as her daughter at her daughter's middle school. In videos posted to social media, you can see her wearing a hoodie and a mask to try to conceal her identity. She made it all the way from first period to last period and then was ultimately caught. ABC's TJ Holmes has the story.
Do I look like a 7th grader? No? Cool. Awesome.
This El Paso mother is facing multiple charges after admitting to posing as her 13-year-old daughter at her middle school.
Okay, I'm in.
According to the complaint affidavit, 30-year-old Casey Garcia checked into the school using her child's ID number and was seen in these videos posted to social media inside the school building. The mom managed to greet the principal.
Hello. Good morning. Good morning.
Attend PE class.
The coach literally came up to me and was like, "Who are you?" And I was like, "Julie."
Even eat lunch maskless in the cafeteria among 7th graders.
I've been here all day, face to face with teachers.
Making it until last period before getting caught.
I told them that I would go to the principal's office, so I guess we're gonna see. What happens?
Police arrested Garcia, but she claims she wanted to highlight possible security flaws and safety protocols within the school, posting this explanation on YouTube saying she was trying to help prevent mass shootings. She's now charged with criminal trespass and tampering with government records. In a statement sent to parents in the San Elizario Independent School District, the superintendent acknowledged the breach in security and adds, "Our security measures are being reviewed and evaluated not only at the school where the incident occurred, but all schools and facilities in the district."
Our thanks to TJ Holmes for that. Finally tonight, to the growing divide between rural and urban America. Tonight, an effort in rural Oregon is well underway to literally leave the state and become part of Idaho. More and more Oregon counties say that the urban centers do not represent the state that they want to be a part of. Arkana Whitworth reports.
Divisions in America continue to widen.
Today, Oregon's making a stand.
Fueled by the pandemic and a divisive election season, but perhaps none more than the disillusion between urban and rural, and no place is experiencing the urgency quite like Oregon. Political unrest has been growing in the state for decades.
The feelings have been there for almost 100 years.
Of the 36 counties in Oregon, 26 voted for Donald Trump in the last presidential election. President Joe Biden winning just 10, but that included the liberal city center of Portland. Biden ultimately won the state by 16 points. That similar scenario has played out for over 40 years. Some residents in rural areas say they feel overlooked.
For 20 years, we've tried to elect a better balance into the state legislature.
The last time a Republican won was Reagan. Last November, 2 rural Oregon counties voted in favor of ballot initiatives that could lead to being incorporated into Idaho. Last month, 5 more counties followed suit. Put together, these 7 rural counties are larger than Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Jersey, Rhode Island, and Delaware combined, but home to just 63,000 people.
It's got a life of its own right now. I can watch it, I can feel it take off. This would be Oregon.
Mike McCarter, president of Citizens for Greater Idaho, believes redrawing the state line can become a reality, and he thinks it's time.
Oh, it's great right now. The momentum is incredible.
Members of the movement say their needs, concerns, contributions, and way of life are being ignored by state leaders.
You've got to realize that 78% of Oregon's population is in the Willamette Valley on 21% of the land. They're trying to solve their problems there, but they don't realize what it does to rural Oregon.
Under this proposed plan, on this bridge in Central Oregon, I could stand with 1 foot in Idaho and 1 foot in Oregon. They would use this part of the Deschutes River that has long been a symbolic dividing line as the actual border. And Idaho would gain enough land to make it the 3rd largest state in the country. Over the next few months, 6 eastern and southern Oregon counties have meetings set to discuss joining Idaho. Idaho Falls State Representative Barbara Ehart sees adding land, resources, and like-minded people to the 2nd fastest growing state in the country as a positive.
Why not have a conversation when you're looking at dealing with people who absolutely have like-minded values, who appreciate those things, particularly maintaining our constitutional values, maintaining our First Amendment rights to freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and to allow people to kind of live and be accountable for themselves.
Not everyone is on board, though. Clay Berenson, a Medford, Oregon city councilman, is against the plan, despite a majority of his constituents supporting the proposal.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I think it's another byproduct of our failing 2-party system. I think that, people have become so polarized that they can't even accept anything if it comes from the other side of the aisle. And rather than trying to find compromise and bipartisanship, they would just rather leave the state and go hang out with the state that is more friendly to their ideals.
The Deschutes River starts in the Cascades, and it flows for 252 miles where it meets the Columbia. Here in Bend, Oregon, this part would remain in Oregon. What do you have to say to people that feel like you should just move to Idaho?
It goes all the way back to the difference between urban and rural. We're rural out here. Rural folks have that traditional value of family, faith, and freedom. We're tied to our land. Many of us out here are multiple generations on the same piece of property. We don't want to move to a new place. We're tied into our schools, we're tied into our families. So moving is not the option.
Both state legislatures and the U.S. Congress have to come to an agreement for the change to happen, a process even Idaho Governor Brad Little acknowledges is steep, telling ABC News that there's a lot that needs to happen before moving the border is within the realm of possibility. As a city councilman, you have people that live here that you represent who feel like their only answer is to move the state line and become a part of Idaho. How does that make you feel?
Well, it doesn't make me feel good. You know, like I said, I love being an Oregonian. I don't want to be part of Idaho.
In this bitterly divided political climate,
Stop supporting a fascist president.
some hoping state pride will win out.
I would hope that, you know, people would maybe look at a different political perspective and maybe, you know, don't cling to their political parties and be a part of the solutions.
Kana Whitworth, ABC News, Medford, Oregon.
Very interesting. Our thanks to Kana for that. Before we go tonight, the image of the day. This diver is one of the workers trying to clear what has been called sea snot. You can see why. The slimy substance has been taking over waters in parts of Turkey, threatening marine and fisheries there. One of the biggest maritime cleanup operations in that nation's history began today as a result. And that is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. And coming up in our next hour, we're staying on top of several things. We're on the ground in Mexico for the final leg of Vice President Harris's trip to Central America. But did she achieve any of her goals on curbing migration? And the growing number of women of color breaking barriers and running for higher office. Our Devin Dwyer caught up with several of them.
Pride. When I look at the black families that were in towns like Tulsa,
the white population burned the whole town down.
100 years ago, there were race riots and massacres across the country.
In telling the story of what happened, we can understand what we have come through. This idea that we will make America what it was, no, no, no. We will make America what she should be.
Most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart they did this.
It's the time of suspicion.
The ending's really tough. You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
There were
once was a housewife.
Erica Jane, the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills,
who married a hustler.
Tom Girardi was LA Law, so powerful.
They were just blowing money left and right. But then,
the Real Housewives star accused with her husband of staging a fake divorce.
Thomas Girardi accused of embezzlement. People love a good scandal.
The biggest question is, did she know?
The Housewife and the Hustler, only on Hulu.
We want to know how you say.
Can't start my day without GMA.
Now, with America reopening, we want you to show us how you say.
Good morning, America.
So get together with friends, family.
Good morning, America.
And share with us at #MyGMA how you say.
Good morning, America.
And you might see yourself right here on GMA.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We're monitoring several developments here at ABC News at this hour. President Biden is walking away from negotiations with Republicans on a massive infrastructure deal and is now shifting his focus to a separate set of negotiations with a bipartisan group. Weeks of discussions between the president and a group of 6 Republicans did little to resolve how big the package would be or how it would be paid for. The new bombshell report from ProPublica reveals that some of America's wealthiest pay little to no income tax. Jeff Bezos reportedly paid no taxes in 2007 and 2011. Yes, that Jeff Bezos, who owns Amazon and is planning to fly next month into outer space in his own rocket. But Warren Buffett was the billionaire who reportedly paid the least in taxes between 2014 to 2018. He paid a true tax rate of 0.1% or less than 10 cents for every $100 he added to his wealth. And it's being called one of the most sweeping criminal takedowns in history. More than 800 arrests in 16 countries, all of it after the FBI created a messaging app and then lured criminals into using it. Now to that scathing report on the deadly siege of the Capitol, a bipartisan Senate report finding security and intelligence failures at every level of government and ignored warnings, including a December report weeks before the attack about threats of violence. The report is also making headlines for what is not in it. Our Rachel Scott reports.
Tonight, a blistering bipartisan report revealing massive security failures at every level of government leading up to January 6th. USA! The 5-month investigation painting a dark picture, revealing critical breakdowns in communication and preparation among the Capitol Police, FBI, DHS, and Department of Defense. The panel finding that weeks before the attack, Capitol Police intelligence uncovered information about the threat of violence, including a blog post with a map of the Capitol, encouraging Trump supporters to surround every building with a tunnel entrance or exit. One comment saying, "This is do or die, bring your guns." But the full scope of that information was never fully conveyed to Capitol Police leadership or its officers, who then came under attack. Senator Amy Klobuchar was one of 4 senators who led the review.
Is there any reason why the Capitol should have been left vulnerable on January 6th?
No. But literally, there were posts floating around with maps of the tunnels under the Capitol.
The report laying out 20 recommendations, including the selection of a new Capitol Police chief. Late today, the department responding.
This department is already making major changes to protect our most valuable asset, which is you and everybody on Capitol grounds.
But the report did not address what led up to the attack, including if former President Donald Trump's words provoked the violence we saw that day, or any contributing factors in the weeks and months leading up to the attack. And tonight, renewed calls from Democrats and some Republicans to investigate what led to this, even after efforts for a January 6th commission failed.
I see this report as very valuable, but not a substitute for an independent commission.
But it has already failed once in the Senate, blocked by Republicans. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell telling me it's a non-starter.
What we needed was a quick solution to the problem on security and pursuit of those who broke the law, which the Justice Department assures me is going on very, very aggressively.
Our thanks to Rachel for that. Now to the latest on the coronavirus pandemic and the pace of vaccinations appearing to slow down across the country. A new poll shows 78% of adults not planning to get the shot say they have no plans to reconsider. This as officials offer incentives to get more shots administered. ABC's Rena Roy has the very latest.
The
The race to vaccinate America now sputtering along, moving much slower than many were hoping for. On average, only about 410,000 adults are getting first doses each day, down from the 1.4 million daily vaccinations in April. At the current pace, the U.S. will likely reach 68% of adults partially vaccinated by July 4th, short of President Biden's goal of 70%. And now thousands of vaccine doses are set to expire, with Ohio saying it's on track to lose 200,000 J&J shots and Arkansas expecting to lose 70,000 this month.
Our first goal is that every dose that's been ordered by a governor in a state gets used. It's not realistic to expect that not a single dose will go to waste.
Southern states like Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana have some of the lowest vaccination rates in the country. Cases in Alabama rising nearly 90% in the last 2 weeks.
Our numbers have increased back towards 400 or 500 cases a day.
Frustrations in Texas, where some unvaccinated nurses at Houston Methodist Hospital are protesting vaccination requirements. The hospital says nearly 100% of employees have gotten the shot. Those who haven't facing suspension and possible termination if they fail to comply.
We should be allowed to make our own decisions.
Meantime, drug makers charging forward. Pfizer now moving into later stage clinical trials in 5 to 11-year-olds at lower doses than adults.
Thank you, Anna.
Our thanks to Rena. And still to come, the investigation into Fisher-Price after 50 infants died after using rock and plays. The hidden history and heroes revealed. Our conversation with an author who has a new book out on female-led slave revolts.
There's a sense of pride when I look at the Black families that were in towns like Tulsa.
The white population burned the whole town down.
100 years ago, there were race riots and massacres across the country.
In telling the story of what happened, we can understand what we have come through. This idea that we will make America what it was, no, no, no. We will make America what she should be.
Most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart they did this.
It's the time of suspicion.
The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Welcome back. We are tracking several international headlines at this hour. 2 men have been arrested for assaulting French President Emmanuel Macron during a visit to a small town in the southeastern portion of that nation. As you can see, Macron walked over to a rope line when a man just slaps him right in the face. The man and the companion were both detained. Neither were armed. A London Metropolitan Police officer has pleaded guilty to kidnapping and raping Sarah Everard in March. You might recall the death of the 33-year-old marketing exec sparked anger in the UK and around the world, with women sharing stories about the dangers of being left alone. The 48-year-old police constable also took responsibility for her death, but did not enter a formal plea in a murder charge that he faces. Tokyo police and firefighters aged 64 and under have now stated receiving COVID shots at a mass vaccination center in one of the city's famous fish markets. The site hopes to vaccinate 110,000 people until it turns into a transportation hub for the upcoming Olympic Games. And we turn now to Vice President Kamala Harris on the second day of her trip to Latin America to work on addressing the root causes of the migrant surge on our southern border. ABC's Mary Alice Parks is traveling with the Vice President and joins us now from Mexico City. Mary Alice, the Vice President just wrapped up a press conference. Are there any major headlines? And just give us a sense of what she's accomplished on this trip.
Well, at the press conference, she said she considered this trip a success, but it's really been an introductory trip. She was able to secure new agreements with both the Guatemalan government and the Mexican government. In Guatemala, they agreed to create a task force to work on corruption, and here in Mexico, agreed to continue to talk about security concerns. But she has tried to really downplay expectations that any of her work is going to see results soon. She was asked repeatedly about when there will be fewer people crossing the border, when there will be results from her work, and she dodged. Take a listen.
The issue of root causes is not going to be solved in one trip that took 2 days. This is an issue that is long-standing, is in many cases generational. It is not a new issue for the United States to feel the effects of those root causes on our shores.
So you can see her focus is really on these long-term strategies, things like economic development that take time. Lindsay?
And Vice President Harris also got repeat questions as far as why she isn't traveling directly to the U.S.-Mexico border to see the conditions there as part of this trip. How's she been answering that?
Yeah, she's been defensive on these questions. She has tried to keep the focus on, as she said, their root causes in Guatemala, in Honduras, in El Salvador, saying that what's happening at the border is a result of what's happening in those countries. But as you said, she was asked over and over again why she hasn't been yet as vice president to the southern border. Today, she said finally that she will go soon. And she said, look, I was a senator from California. I've been to the border. I know these issues. But she is going to continue to get pressed on this.
Yeah, she likely will. And she's also getting some criticism from Democrats over her comments yesterday in Guatemala when she told people there, do not come to the United States to seek asylum. What's the pushback been from her own party?
Yeah, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said those remarks were disappointing, that people have a legal right to seek asylum at the border. The ACLU as well responded to her directly, saying people have a right to seek asylum. And look, the administration doesn't have a good answer on this. They say that eventually they want people to be able to apply for asylum in country, but the reality is they can't right now. So some mixed messaging where the administration is saying they understand people are trying to seek asylum and they want there to be avenues, but right now they're still telling people not to come. And I think they're going to continue to get a lot of pressure from Democrats and human rights organizations about what the avenues are today to seek asylum.
Mary Alice Parks reporting in for us from Mexico City. Our thanks to you, Mary Alice. Today in Virginia, Democrats headed to the polls to select their nominee for governor. 2 black women were in the field. They're part of a wave of aspiring female barrier breakers on the campaign trail this summer, from Seattle to Raleigh to Boston, where for the first time in 199 years, someone other than a white man is now in charge. Here's our Devin Dwyer.
It is an incredible time in our city's history, in our country's history.
Kim Janey is the acting mayor of Boston and slayer of a nearly 2-century succession of white Irish or Italian-American men leading the city where the American Revolution began.
Women have always led. I think what is new is that women are being recognized for their leadership. Black women have always had to make a way out of no way. That is just what we do. It is what is in our DNA.
You feel a pressure to deliver because you're the first?
Certainly, being the first, first, you want to create more opportunity for others.
In March, Janey became the first by default after former Mayor Marty Walsh joined the Biden cabinet. Now she's one of a historic field of 6 candidates of color vying for a full term as mayor this fall.
Many people ask, is this what you always dreamt of doing? Did you always want to be mayor? And, you know, I didn't see that for myself because I didn't see it in anyone else.
The drive to be seen in positions of political power has galvanized women of color candidates nationwide, already this year capturing the vice presidency and a record 49 seats in Congress.
It's not just counting beans, it's not just about demographics, that those demographics align with lived experiences and perspectives that will change the literal conversations and debates in our political spaces.
Sights are now set on big city mayorships, governorships, and Senate seats where no woman of color has served before.
Why are these first still happening more than 100 years after women got the right to vote?
I think it speaks to the real stubbornness of our political institutions, which were built literally in ways that excluded women and even more so excluded women of color.
When I ran, people said, there's no way. Boston doesn't elect women. Boston doesn't elect young people, Asian Americans.
Michelle Wu, the first Asian American elected to Boston City Council, says she felt empowered to run for mayor after growing angry over barriers to immigrants and people with mental illness, something her own mother grapples with.
In some ways, I've had to learn from scratch just how much government matters in the daily barriers that my family was facing and how much politics shapes every bit of the systems that we are all struggling with.
For fellow city councilor Andrea Campbell, it's systemic inequality, especially in the criminal justice system where her twin brother Andre died in police custody at 29.
The painful murder we all witnessed of George Floyd, and I often say I didn't need to witness that as a black woman, as a mother of 2 black boys, to know that we had work to do here in the city of Boston. The beautiful thing, I think, in this moment in time is that there are folks who are becoming more conscious that racism is real, that discrimination is real, and they want to do something about it.
The movement for racial justice now inspiring more women of color to chase political power. In New York City, civil rights lawyer Maya Wiley is in the hunt to succeed outgoing Mayor Bill de Blasio. While in Seattle, 2 women of color are top contenders to lead that city for the first time. North Carolina's first black woman state Supreme Court Chief Justice Sherry Beasley has thrown her hat in the ring for U.S. Senate.
I'm very much aware that there are only 24 women currently serving in the United States Senate. There are 0 African-American women. North Carolina is a diverse state, and we want to see the same reflected in the leadership.
I think it's important for especially our residents across the city of Boston to see reflections of themselves in leadership. That's critically important.
Boston councilor and mayoral candidate Anissa Asabi George is a small business owner and the nation's only Tunisian American in elected office.
It sometimes becomes instead of a compliment or an added enrichment of the diversity of this race, it becomes a distraction from the work.
She says acceptance of women of color in politics is still a work in progress.
There is, as you know, a debate whether or not I count as a woman of color, whether or not Arabs qualify for this distinction. And it is certainly the struggle my dad had. So I feel like this moment for me personally has been in the making for many, many years.
A milestone moment years in the making, thanks to generations of women who forged a path. Shirley Chisholm, Carol Mosley Braun, Nikki Haley, Stacey Abrams, and legions of strong moms.
Lolita, Lois. My faith runs deep in me, and it's because of her example.
I take inspiration every day from my mom, a woman who is still, although she struggles and lives with mental illness, the strongest person I know.
For me, it's really about regular women who just go to work every day, who wake up every day, who show up every day.
I see a portrait of Michelle Obama on the wall here as well. She's someone who has spoken to you and touched you.
She has been an incredible first lady and certainly is an inspiration to so many women and girls all across our country.
What message do you hope that your leadership and your mayorship sends to those kids when they learn about Kim Janey?
Well, it is so important for our young people to see this example, to see me here. If you don't see it, how can you ever imagine it for yourself?
For ABC News, I'm Devin Dwyer in Boston.
Right, you have to see it to be nice to see so many saw it right in their own mothers. Our thanks to Devin for that. Fisher-Price is in the hot seat after a congressional investigation found the company ignored repeated warnings about its rock and play sleepers, which are linked to more than 50 infant deaths. ABC's Rebecca Jarvis has this story.
I am appalled by the conduct of this company.
A new congressional report finding Fisher-Price ignored repeated warnings about its once popular rock and play sleeper. A Fisher-Price executive testifying on Monday that 97 infant deaths linked to the rock and play have been reported to the company. Erica Richter told the committee she tragically lost her 2-week-old daughter Emma in 2018 while using a rock and play.
I didn't think anything of it except that it was a Fisher-Price product, and so that it must be safe.
Fisher-Price telling ABC News the rock and play sleeper was designed and developed following extensive research, medical advice, safety analysis, and more than a year of testing and review. The rock and play went on sale in 2009, selling roughly 4.7 million units before Fisher-Price recalled it in 2019. The report alleging that during those 10 years, Fisher-Price marketed the product as an overnight sleeper, even though some regulators and consumers warned the company that infants could roll over and suffocate. Pediatricians recommend babies sleep flat on their back. Fisher-Price testifying Monday that it followed all applicable safety standards at the time.
When introduced, it met the CPSC and consensus standards applicable to bassinets.
For Erica, she says she hopes no parent has to experience her nightmare.
I think about what life would be like if I had known.
Our thanks to Rebecca. And now to a story about Black female warriors. They were enslaved people who made their mark in history but were long overlooked. Dr. Rebecca Hall, an activist, educator, and herself the granddaughter of enslaved people, uncovers their legacy in her new book, Wake, The Hidden History of Women-Led Slave Revolts. It's an illustrated history and also a personal memoir. Dr. Hall, it's a pleasure to speak with you tonight.
Oh, it's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
So before we dive into your research, let's talk about the unusual graphic structure of your book. Why did you choose comic strip artwork in order to tell this history?
Yeah, well, the graphic novel medium is very powerful. I was very moved by graphic memoirs that have been, previous graphic memoirs. There's something that you can do in this medium that can't be achieved in just regular text or even in film. The relationship between, there's a complex relationship between past and present in this book, and this medium is uniquely suited to that.
And let's talk more about these women warriors. You find in your research that the higher number of women on a slave ship, the greater the odds of a revolt. I think that's very interesting. How do you explain that and the role of women in the slave-led revolts that you studied?
Yeah, so this finding was actually done by historians who had worked on the Atlantic slave trade for decades and compiled a massive database of over 35,000 slave ship voyages. And once they had that database, you could query it, and they queried it and found that there were revolts on 1 in 10 ships, which surprised everyone because revolts on slave ships tended to be kind of like an act of suicide. And then when they asked themselves, queried the database and asked, well, what's the difference between the ships that had revolts versus the ships that didn't have revolts? The only thing that was statistically different was that the more women on the ship, the more likely to be a revolt. And the historians who did this at the time sort of dismissed this and said, well, this must be a fluke because we know that women weren't involved in this type of resistance. But I went and looked at the actual captain ship's logs on these ships and, found women involved in revolt. And the reason why is because, once a ship left the coast of West Africa, women were brought on deck and unchained. So they had greater mobility and it's also where the weapons were kept. And this is like a regulated business practice. This was actually how the slave trade was regulated, and this is how people were instructed to operate their business.
So the women were unfettered and therefore had more opportunity to revolt, it sounds like. And there, of course, have been numerous books about slavery and resistance. So why do you think that these women's stories stayed hidden for so long?
Yeah, that's a complex question, but I think it's important for people to understand that history is always written in a context, right? There's a social and political context, and then history is also written in conversation with other historians. So, the social and political context, for a long time, there was no history written about slave resistance at all in this country because the historians writing it insisted that there was no resistance and that slavery was just fine.
In order to uncover this history, you began your research in urban areas like New York City. So often we hear about the history of slavery in the South. So I'm curious what made you decide to focus on Northern slavery and what you found.
Well, a couple things. I grew up in New York City, and also I was focusing on, early British America, the early 1700s. And I also wanted to intervene in this idea that slavery was this sort of very regional, deep South, antebellum, gone with the wind plantation system, and really to illustrate that this is something that was, throughout what would become the United States, and that slavery was also very much of an urban phenomena. And it's so important to highlight the role of slavery in New York City because it was very formative in the creation of the city, and its base, creation of its base as a financial capital of the United States, perhaps the world. Yeah.
And lastly, as a historian and the granddaughter of enslaved people, what lasting impact do you hope that your readers of your book will take away, and also the historical record?
Yeah, well, what I really hope that this country, that we start to become able to come to terms with the legacy of slavery, and I try to address that in my book. I want people to be able to understand more about the institution, understand how people of African descent fought and resisted slavery every step of the way, and for us to understand and engage with some kind of process of truth and reconciliation about the legacy of slavery and its impact on us today.
Dr. Rebecca Hall, we thank you so much. Wake, The Hidden History of Women-Led Slave Revolts is available wherever books are sold. And finally tonight, with more Americans getting vaccinated, more people are having house guests over. And our Will Gans has some friendly reminders about some house guest etiquette.
Even small talk can be a big problem in social situations.
I have lost my fiancé, the poor baby.
Maybe the dingo ate your baby.
And as restrictions on indoor gatherings start to lift, it's important to make sure you remember how to be a good house guest.
When you arrive to your host's place, you want to make sure that you give a gift, a little gift of some sort, or when you leave, you send a gift afterwards.
A new poll spotlighting the biggest house guest faux pas, according to hosts. Number 1, staining the furniture.
My new sofa, Bobby Pete, on my new sofa!
Followed by putting feet on the couch, going into other rooms uninvited, bringing dogs without asking, and going through the medicine cabinet. And then there's this big no-no to keep in mind.
Guests are a lot like fish. After 2 or 3 days, they begin to stink. So don't outwear your welcome. So if you say you're going to stay for a day or 2, keep your word.
Our etiquette expert says there are even more things to remember after a year without house parties and hosting guests.
your expectations may be different from your host's expectations when it comes to COVID and have people been vaccinated and so forth. So it's really important to set the ground rules before you arrive and never assume.
Good to know the expectations about mask wearing and social distancing when back in people's homes. Again, our thanks to Will Gans for that. And that is our show for tonight. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. Have a great night.
There's a sense of pride when I look at the Black